I've been telling you for years that you want a second citizenship. More recently, I've told you I think a lot of people could benefit from 3 citizenships. I currently have 5, and there are 3 more that I'm pursuing in the next year. Today, I'm going to tell you what they are and why I'm doing this. My name is Andrew Henderson. I'm the author of this now classic book called Nomad Capitalist, where we talk about second citizenship as a way to protect yourself from crazy governments, give yourself options. A lot of our clients right now are looking for Plan B. If you'd like our help with that, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. Now, about a year ago, I did an interview where I explained why I have 5 passports.
Why would you have 5 passports?
At a certain point, I suppose, well, I think it's very strategic. I think at a certain point, there's probably some point along the way, my story from the United States. I'm not a big fan. You're not supposed to say that, but I just don't agree with a lot of the politics. I never did since I was a teenager. Didn't really want to be from there. Didn't want to identify with it. Gave up that passport. And so you might think, if you already have 5 different citizenships, why would you want 3 more? I'm inspired. We had a client once. He was a world-class poker player. And when you asked him why he kept spending all of his time working on getting better at poker, he thought about it, and he said, mastery. This is what I love. This is what I do. I believe in you having dual or multiple citizenships to protect your options, particularly if you have a Western passport, particularly U.S. or another geopolitically toxic country's passport. I think you need a backup plan. If your country's going to tax you around the world, or already does, as the U.S. does, I think you need a backup plan, if not an actual plan A, where you leave that country. For me, I no longer am a U.S. citizen. I'm at peace with all of my passports. I don't talk about all of them. But what I realize is there are still more opportunities out there, because I am, at my core, and I have been really my entire adult life, a believer in what they call the global South, that emerging countries are going to take a bigger share of the pie, and that just because I was born in the United States and you didn't really hear much about Indonesia or, Chile, that somehow those countries aren't going to take a bigger share. They may never be world superpowers, and they almost certainly won't be. I don't want to be the citizen of a superpower, but I do want access to different regions of the world that I think could be moving in the right direction. And so beyond that, I enjoy it. It's fun. I can afford it. I think there's some good investment potential in some of these. And quite frankly, I've realized at 40 years old, if people don't appreciate me for who I am, I don't want them in my life. If there's ever a country that's not going to give me a visa, and there's a very small number of countries I need a visa for, I just won't go there. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to have fun getting different passports and opening up my opportunities to the greatest extent possible. I was talking to some banker in Switzerland. Oh, we don't know if we like that passport. Great. I don't need a bank in Switzerland. And so let's go through the list. I think that self-acceptance has helped me. Here's the first one on the list. I am applying to become a citizen of Cambodia. And so Cambodia has a program. We first started writing about it on our blog, nomadcapitalist.com, way back in 2013, in the halcyon days of Cambodia for me. I've been fascinated by Cambodia since 2006. I went on a binge reading all about its history. I thought there were incredible opportunities even before I knew how any of this stuff really worked. I've invested a lot of money in Cambodia, and I believe in the future. I think that even something like real estate is going to do very well. I also see Cambodia as basically being the only Southeast Asian citizenship that is readily attainable as being valuable. Cambodia is part of the growing ASEAN region, which has close to 700 million people in it. It's the biggest regional group next to China and India in the world. I live part-time in Malaysia and have for over a decade. I like this part of the world. It just personally intrigues me, as does Cambodia. I just feel a sense of wonder when I'm there. And so for me, being able to be a citizen of the country opens up whatever opportunities may come from being an ASEAN member state citizen in the future. It allows me to go and buy land and buy property as a local in Cambodia. I don't know that the land there is incredibly cheap compared to what you'd find in a lot of Eastern European countries. I find some of the prices there pretty surprisingly high. But I could go and buy a hotel, for example, in the capital of Phnom Penh, and I could run that, and I could own the land underlying it, which a foreigner cannot. Cambodia used to allow foreigners in each of the different, neighborhoods of Phnom Penh to buy certain what are called shop house apartments, these kind of older buildings in great locations. They're not brand new condos. They're just kind of old, the buildings built above a ground floor shop. Pretty much all the neighborhoods of Cambodia, of Phnom Penh, the local captain, the mayor, as it were, no longer will approve foreigners to buy those. And so if I just wanted to buy an apartment at a very reasonable price in Cambodia, it helps to be a citizen because foreigners can generally buy condos now, which sell at higher prices than you would pay in Kuala Lumpur. And so for me, the charm of Cambodia is those shop house apartments. You can still pay well under $1,000 a meter for property in amazing city center areas, but now it's pretty much relegated to locals. And so will they change that in the future? That remains to be seen. Certainly there's profit potential for all Cambodians if they were to open that up, because I think you're seeing a lot of particularly Chinese people coming into Cambodia. So for me, being part of that ASEAN bloc, having that citizenship, and by the way, getting free access to Angkor Wat temples, you save yourself a couple bucks on that. The price of Cambodian citizenship is a donation along with some legal fees. The donation itself is right around $250,000. It is 1 billion Cambodian riels, which trades pretty much right at about 4,040 to the dollar, and always has. So I think it's a very interesting country, one that I actually have an affinity for. I like it. I like going there. I'd be proud of it. And so now I get to make a donation and have access to invest there and to go there and be part of ASEAN. One thing I will tell you is my motivation is if you can afford this, you want to do it while you can, because these programs do tend to go away over time. If you look at the Caribbean citizenship by investment programs or Vanuatu, those tend to not go away. Now, they've increased in price over the years, but that is a serious part of those countries' economies in a way that it's not a part of Cambodia's or the other countries on this list. So if you have access to get citizenship, whether it's by naturalization or whether it's by descent or whether it's by investment like this, don't wait because the program rules, prices, terms, what have you, can change at any time. That's one reason I decided to act now. One thing I will not be doing in Cambodia, by the way, is taking a Cambodian name. I'm not a big believer in name changes on passports, and I generally advise people to not do that. So that's one thing people bring up for Cambodia. I don't engage in that. Number 2 passport is Egypt. People say, why would you want to be a citizen of Egypt? Number 1, it is more geopolitically neutral than some of the other countries that offer citizenship by investments. And I think people just think because it's in Africa that there's an issue with it. I'll tell you what, the same Swiss banker I talked to said, yeah, we don't have a problem with Egyptians, and we certainly know that you actually aren't Egyptian. We had a guy who worked with us who was Egyptian. His name was Andrew. There are people with the name Andrew. There are Christians from Egypt. It is certainly an emerging country. It is one of the poorer countries that I have been to. And yet I've always had an affinity for Egypt since the 6th grade. It was actually my favorite. Ancient Egypt was my favorite part of history class. And I always found it to be fascinating. When I first went and saw the pyramids and did the typical tourist stuff many years ago, I found it to be fascinating. What I find interesting about having the passport, besides the fact that I just like kind of feeling connected to these places by having the passport, I mean, there's something that really is joyful for me about saying I can hold a Cambodian passport that is my own from a country that I really have a love for. Egypt, a country that I'm fascinated by and that is so mysterious to me. I can be one of them. I think that as the African Union, I've been telling you this for years, as the African Union tries to unite more African countries, there will be investment and migration opportunities throughout the region. I don't know how long it'll take before it becomes, a full European Union. That may never happen. But I certainly think, what are you seeing all across Africa as you look at, Chinese investment in Africa, Russian investment in Africa? Number 1, they don't really want to do that much with the West anymore. And a lot of what you've been seeing in parts of Western Africa in the last few years is kicking out the French, kicking out what they believe are, pro-Western governments, I'm not saying I agree with that or not, but I'm saying there's a general trend in Africa of doing their own thing and being outside of the Western orbit. Africa first, let's call it. And I think as a hedge, I think as the opportunity to be part of a continent that is the last great frontier, having a passport from one of the countries in that continent could potentially be very valuable. And the price, quite frankly, is quite reasonable. Egypt, like Turkey, has a real estate-based citizenship by investment program. In Egypt, if you invest $300,000 into property and you hold that property for 5 years, you get citizenship. But even if you sell the property after the 5 years, you keep that citizenship for life. And so I recently sent one of my R&D colleagues and one of my best friends, the real estate maestro, down to Egypt. And they spent a week in Cairo and in the new capital visiting dozens of properties. And I gave them a whole brief of what I wanted them to put together for me and for any clients who want this, of how to buy secondhand properties at affordable prices, how to negotiate. We brought in some of our Arabic-speaking friends, and we put together a playbook, not to buy properties from developers, which is what a lot of these citizenship programs in Turkey and in Egypt, they just say, oh, just buy from the developers. My view is you're going to overpay in most cases buying it from a developer. But if you buy a secondhand property, you could potentially make money. I bought property in Turkey back at the end of 2020, and that property's gone up, maybe close to 50%, something like that. In dollar terms, not lira. In lira terms, it's gone through the roof, but in dollar terms, it's up 50%. And so if I could repeat that, and I could do that in Egypt, and I get a citizenship, and I spend $300,000, then I've basically gotten paid to get a second passport. And on top of that, I don't plan to live in Cairo. I do enjoy going there, but I don't plan to keep that as one of my homes. We're going to buy a place, and we found some places that for the $300,000 mark, they actually look pretty good. They're on the island of Zamalek in the middle of Cairo. That's, to me, the place that you want to buy. And you can collect probably $24,000 in gross rents, probably something like $17,000 or $18,000 in net rents. Assume you rent it 80% of the time. You're going to collect 70 grand in rent. Maybe, who knows what you can make in appreciation in dollar terms. What people don't realize is when you go to a neighborhood like Zamalek, or when you go to a neighborhood at Istanbul, like Nishantasi, prices are generally, thought of in dollars and euros because wealthy people live there. They're not desperate. Some of those sellers in Zamalek, they live overseas. They live in Dubai. They live in the United States in some cases. They're not desperate to get Egyptian pounds back. They're going to sell their property in dollar terms. And so when you go to sell your property, there's kind of a sense that, hey, prices, even if the pound goes down, the dollar price stays the same, or maybe even goes up because of the limited supply there. And so for me, to be able to get paid, in all likelihood, to get a second passport, have greater access to an emerging continent. Cairo is a minor airline hub. There's something to that. I think that's pretty interesting. And I think, that's a crossroads of not only where I spend my time in the global South, but an up-and-coming place. Yes, it is a very cheap place. I think the fourth cheapest real estate city in the world is Cairo, Egypt. Prices are low. Now, not quite as low as you might think in Zamalek, but you can go outside of Zamalek. You can pay like $600-700 a square meter. That's insanely cheap for a capital city that is also a mega city. And so if you want to talk about buying when there's blood in the streets, that's a blood in the streets kind of opportunity. I don't know how property goes that much lower. Don't take that as an investment advice. It's just my personal philosophy. Now, you want something a bit more conventional? I am also going to apply about a year from now for citizenship in Portugal. I got the Portugal Golden Visa. There have been some frustrations in Portugal, but I think that the government has largely remedied them in the sense of when you apply for your Golden Visa is the time that starts towards naturalization now. And so I will be able to apply in 2026, and I will do that. We have found a way to help me learn the language a little bit easier. There is a basic language test that you need to pass. I'm going to be spending some time in Portugal. I'll probably celebrate my birthday there this year. And so Portugal, being a European Union member state, means that I would have a European Union passport. It's not something that I always thought I had to have. I don't intend to use it to travel to the United States. I don't intend to start going to Canada or Australia with it. But it means that I have 30 different countries across Europe that I could live in if and when I get that passport. That's not the worst thing. I don't see Portugal as the biggest threat to institute some kind of citizenship-based taxation. I think one of the things that I look at is kind of the culture and the history of the country. I mean, the Portuguese were maritime traders. And there's a culture somewhat similar to what we talked about in Live Like a King, Oman. And I called Oman the Portugal of the Gulf, where you have these incredibly friendly and open-minded people because they had to go around and get along with everybody to trade. They are not the biggest or most prosperous country in the region. And so they have to, I think that's part of the culture. Now, being part of the EU, are there some requirements? I don't know that they're very dramatic for not living there. But certainly I think that, Portugal is a country that we've talked to people about over the years. I've had my frustrations. Again, I think they've been rectified. One of the frustrations is they got rid of their tax deal. And so for someone who wants to move to Portugal right now, that's an issue. I certainly will spend some time in Portugal. I enjoy Portugal. I'm happy to speak some Portuguese. It's not a place that I want to move into. It's not a place that I want to pay high taxes, but it is a place that I've made investments in and might, continue to do so under the right circumstances. So these are 3 passports that I'm looking at. Now, I already have plenty of other passports. So the question is, what about you? Well, if you go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, we'll talk about you. We look for clients that have $1 million or more in liquid assets or have $500,000 or more in income per year from a business or trading. Our sweet spot really for clients has been $5 to $100 million net worths. And we help you figure out how many passports you need, what you want to accomplish. And you don't have to get these ones. You can get traditional citizenship by investment in the Caribbean. You can get Malta's $1 million passport. I chose years ago, back before Nomad Capitalist was quite as big as it is now. I chose to take the more affordable route and go and get the Portugal Golden Visa as a pathway to EU citizenship, knowing that Europe wasn't like so incredibly, absolutely important to me, but would be a nice to have. But your needs may be different than mine. You may have a big family. You want them to be able to live in Europe. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We will help you figure out your passport portfolio, not by jamming the same 5 passports down your throat that most of the companies in this industry do, but we have access to dozens of passports. That R&D team that I mentioned, all they do is talk to people all around the world all day about new opportunities. How can you help us? What do you know that we don't? We're constantly building our knowledge in some pretty far-flung countries. If I make this video a year from now, you might be hearing about some even further flung countries that we are working on now. And we don't judge. I'm a big believer in the future of the global South. That's where I live most of the time. You might have a different opinion. And so we take you as a unique person who needs a unique plan. That's what we can do. We do your passports. If you want help reducing your taxes, if you want help with international asset protection and banking, we do it all under one roof at nomadcapitalist.com/apply. We take the knowledge of me having done now, 8 different citizenship programs, either finished or in the works. I've done numerous different residence programs around the world. We take all the stuff that I do. We take beta testers, such as my friends, where they try stuff out. We've obviously learned from having a couple thousand clients here from all around the world. And we help you. You pay us a fee to give you the best unbiased advice on where you can go. nomadcapitalist.com/apply, and maybe you'll be telling us about your 3 new passports.
This is Bali. Is how to live like a king.